No one expects to be humiliated by their own child. Not like this. Not at the front door of a mansion. Not under the watchful eyes of security cameras. Not when all they're asking for is food. The glass was cold, the water inside it even colder. It hit the old woman's face without warning, so hard that for a moment she couldn't tell if what ran down her cheeks were drops of water or tears she had been holding back for years. Her glasses shattered on the marble floor, and the voice that followed was sharper than the sound of breaking glass. "Get out! You disgust me!" What no one inside that house noticed, what no one expected, was that across the street, standing perfectly still beneath the Texas sun, a man dressed in simple white was watching, and what was about to happen next would change two lives forever. Before we continue, if stories of faith, forgiveness, and second chances move your heart, subscribe to Heaven Walks with Us. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from tonight. Your story matters here. The gates of the Highland Park estate closed slowly behind her. Linda Ramirez stood frozen for a moment, her hands trembling, her breath shallow. Water dripped from her gray hair onto the concrete driveway, darkening the dust at her feet. Her thin blouse clung to her skin. Her broken glasses dangled uselessly from one hand. Inside the house, Veronica Ortega was already turning away. She didn't look back. From the top of the marble staircase, Veronica had delivered her words with precision, controlled, sharp, practiced. "Don't ever come here again." To the neighbors, to the guards, to the world she had worked so hard to impress, this moment could not exist. Linda took one step forward, then another. Each movement felt heavier than the last, as if her body finally understood what her heart had been trying to deny. She was no longer welcome in her daughter's life. Minutes earlier, she had arrived at the gated entrance after walking nearly 2 hours under the Texas heat. She hadn't eaten in 2 days. Her blood sugar was low. Her knees ached. Her vision blurred. Still, she had hesitated before pressing the intercom. Because asking your own child for help is a kind of pain no one prepares you for. The security guard had looked at her with confusion, then suspicion. He had called the house anyway, and Veronica had answered, not with concern, not with surprise, but with irritation. Inside, the confrontation was brief. Linda had barely spoken before the glass was raised. And then it was over. Now outside the gates, Linda bent down slowly and gathered the pieces of her glasses from the ground. One lens was completely shattered. The frame was bent beyond repair. She slipped them into her pocket anyway. Some habits are hard to break, like saving things that can no longer be fixed. Across the street, a black SUV passed. Somewhere nearby, sprinklers clicked on. Life moved on. Linda stepped onto the sidewalk, blending into the afternoon like a shadow no one intended to notice. She wiped her face with the edge of her sleeve and whispered words she had prayed countless times before, but never with this much exhaustion. "God, I can't do this anymore." She didn't see him at first, but as she lifted her eyes trying to steady herself against a street sign, she noticed someone sitting quietly at the bus stop ahead. A man dressed in simple white, watching her, not with judgment, not with pity, but with a kind of sorrow that felt personal. And for the first time that day, Linda felt something shift, not relief, not hope, just the sense that she was no longer completely alone. The sidewalk felt longer than it should have. Each step Linda Ramirez took sent a dull ache up through her ankles and into her knees, the kind of pain that comes from years of standing too long, bending too often, and resting too little. The Texas sun pressed down without mercy, reflecting off parked cars and manicured lawns that seemed untouched by suffering. She kept walking, not because she was strong, but because stopping felt dangerous. At the corner, the traffic light turned red. Linda paused, gripping the metal pole of a street sign as her vision narrowed. The world tilted slightly like a photograph taken just a moment too late. Her stomach twisted in on itself, sharp and hollow at the same time. 2 days. That's how long it had been since her last real meal. She had told herself she could manage. She always had. A cup of water, a piece of bread from a neighbor, a little less today, a little more tomorrow. That was how she had survived most of her life, stretching what little she had until it almost felt like enough. But today her body was done pretending. A car horn blared somewhere behind her. Linda flinched, then took a breath and crossed the street slowly, carefully, as if afraid the ground might give way beneath her feet. On the other side, she reached the bus stop and lowered herself onto the bench. The metal was hot, but she barely noticed. Her hands rested on her lap. Thin fingers curled inward, still damp from the water that had soaked her face minutes earlier. She stared at the pavement. People passed by without looking. A jogger, a woman pushing a stroller, a man on his phone, laughing at something she couldn't hear. Linda felt invisible, and maybe that was the worst part. She closed her eyes and let her head fall back against the bench. The sound of traffic faded into a distant hum. Her breathing grew shallow. God, she whispered, her voice barely more than air. I'm tired. The words came out before she could stop them. I've done everything I knew how to do. I tried to be strong. I tried to be a good mother. I tried to believe, even when it hurt. Her throat tightened. If this is all I have left, she continued softly, then please, don't let it hurt anymore. She stayed like that for a long moment, eyes closed, waiting for something, anything. Then a voice spoke. Not loud, not sudden, just close enough to feel real. Ma'am, the voice said gently, are you okay? Linda opened her eyes. The man in white was standing now, only a few steps away. And for reasons she couldn't explain, she felt tears rise instantly, before she even answered, before she even understood why this stranger's presence felt like an answer to a prayer she hadn't finished saying. Linda hesitated before answering. She had been asked that question many times before, are you okay? By people who didn't wait for the answer, by voices that asked out of politeness, not concern. Most days she replied with a smile and a lie. I'm fine, she usually said. But something about this man made the words feel dishonest before they even formed. She looked up at him. He wasn't dressed like anyone she recognized from the neighborhood. His clothes were simple. White pants, a white shirt, clean but worn, as if they had traveled a long way. There was nothing flashy about him. No watch, no phone in his hand, no hurry in his posture. Just calm. I'm just tired, Linda said finally, her voice thin. I'll be okay. The man studied her face for a brief moment, not in a way that made her uncomfortable, but with a kind of attention she hadn't felt in years, as if she mattered enough to be truly seen. You're hungry, he said. It wasn't a question. Linda's breath caught in her chest. She opened her mouth to deny it, out of habit more than pride, but the words wouldn't come. Her eyes stung, and she looked down quickly, ashamed of the tears gathering there. I haven't eaten in 2 days, she admitted quietly. The man nodded as though this confirmed something he already knew. Come with me, he said. Linda blinked. I don't have any money. That's not a problem, he replied. I don't want to be a burden, she added quickly. You don't have to. I want to, he interrupted gently, not unkindly, but firmly enough that the conversation seemed settled. There's a place nearby. We can eat. Something about the way he said we made her pause. She searched his face for signs of impatience or pity and found neither. Only an invitation, simple, sincere, without expectation. I don't even know your name, Linda said. He smiled then, not wide, not dramatic, just enough to soften the lines around his eyes. Names can wait, he said. Right now you need food. Linda looked down at her hands. They were shaking again. Every instinct told her to refuse, to stand up, to walk away and figure something out on her own like she always had. Independence had been her shield for decades, but another part of her, smaller, quieter, and much more tired, felt the weight of those 2 empty days pressing in. She stood slowly. Okay, she said, almost in a whisper. The man stepped aside to let her pass, then fell into step beside her without another word. As they walked, Linda noticed how her breathing began to steady, how the tight knot in her chest loosened just a little. She didn't know where they were going. She didn't know who he was. But for the first time that afternoon, she wasn't walking alone. And for reasons she couldn't explain, she felt certain of one thing. This meeting was not an accident. They walked only a few blocks, but it felt like crossing into another world. The noise of traffic softened as they turned onto a quieter street, where the buildings were older and the pace slower. Linda noticed a small diner ahead, its sign faded by years of sun and rain. The Good Samaritan Diner, it read. The windows were fogged slightly from the heat inside. Through the glass, she could see a few people seated at simple tables, construction workers in dusty boots, an elderly couple sharing a plate. The smell hit her first. Chicken soup, fresh bread, something warm and familiar that made her stomach tighten painfully in response. She stopped walking. I don't want to take up a table, Linda said softly. I can just sit outside. The man turned to her, surprised, not offended, but thoughtful. You deserve a chair, he said, and a meal. Before she could argue, he opened the door and held it for her. Inside, the air was cooler. The hum of conversation was low and steady, like a heartbeat. Behind the counter stood a woman in her early 60s with kind eyes and a floral apron. Sit wherever you like, the woman said with a smile. I'll be right with you. They chose a small table near the window. Linda lowered herself into the chair carefully, as if afraid she might be asked to leave. The man sat across from her. When the woman returned, he ordered without hesitation. 2 bowls of soup, bread, and iced tea. Linda's lips parted. That's too much. It's just enough, he said calmly. As the woman walked away, Linda folded her hands in her lap. She realized then how quiet the man had been. No questions, no explanations, no expectations. Just presence. When the food arrived, steam rose gently from the bowls. Linda stared at it for a moment, overwhelmed by something far deeper than hunger. Before we eat, the man said softly, may I say a prayer? She nodded. He bowed his head and his voice lowered. Not theatrical, not rehearsed, just steady. Father, he said, thank you for this food, and thank you for Linda, who has carried more than anyone should have to carry alone. Remind her that she is seen, that she is loved, and that you never abandoned her, not even for a moment. Linda's breath caught. Tears spilled freely now, dropping into her hands as she whispered, Amen. She lifted her spoon and took a sip. The warmth spread through her chest, down into her stomach, through places that had felt empty for far too long. Each bite felt like relief, not just for her body, but for something deeper. The man ate slowly, watching her with quiet attentiveness. After a few minutes, he spoke again. Tell me, he said gently, what happened today? Linda hesitated. Then, as if a door inside her had finally opened, the words began to pour out. She told him about the gate, the glass, the water, the words that still echoed in her ears. My own daughter, she said, her voice breaking. I would have accepted silence. I would have accepted being turned away, but not that. The man listened without interrupting. When she finished, he nodded once. A mother's love doesn't disappear just because it's rejected, he said quietly. It waits. Linda looked at him, startled by the certainty in his voice. For the first time since leaving her daughter's house, she felt something other than pain take root in her chest. Hope. And she had no idea yet how costly and how beautiful that hope was about to become. Linda hadn't planned to say everything. She had only meant to explain the afternoon, just enough to justify her tears. But once she started, the words kept coming, like water finding cracks in a dam that had held for too long. My husband died when Veronica was still in high school, Linda said quietly, staring into her bowl. Construction accident. One moment he was there. The next he wasn't. She paused, steadying her voice. I was 52. No savings. 3 kids. I didn't have time to grieve the way people are supposed to. The man didn't rush her. He simply waited. I cleaned houses during the day, she continued. Did laundry at night. On weekends, I sewed piecework for a factory. Some nights I slept sitting up because my back hurt too much to lie down. Her fingers tightened around the edge of the table. But my kids never missed school. They always had lunch money. Veronica especially. I wanted her to have every chance I never did. She smiled faintly, a memory flickering across her face. She was smart, ambitious. Even as a girl, she hated being poor. I used to hear her tell herself, I won't end up like this. The man nodded once, as if he already understood. When she got into college, Linda went on, I took extra shifts. I didn't tell her how sick I was getting. I thought it was temporary, that once she graduated, things would change. Her smile faded. And they did, just not the way I hoped. She described how Veronica met Frank, how quickly everything moved, how the wedding felt more like a business event than a family celebration. I wore the same blue dress I went to church in, Linda said. I was grateful just to be there. Her voice softened. After that, she stopped calling. Every time I reached out, there was an excuse. Too busy, traveling, meetings, eventually nothing. She looked up at the man then, eyes glistening. I never asked her for money, she said. Never. I only wanted to hear her voice sometimes, to know she was okay. The man leaned forward slightly, his gaze steady. And today, he asked? Linda exhaled shakily. Today I broke my promise to myself, she said. I promised I'd never show up like that, never embarrass her. She swallowed hard. But I was hungry and tired, and I thought, maybe she'd remember who I was. The diner was quiet around them now. Even the clatter from the kitchen seemed distant. The man spoke softly. Do you still love her? Linda didn't hesitate. With everything I have, she said. Even now, even after today. For the first time, something like pain crossed the man's face. Not anger, not judgment, just sorrow. Then listen to me, he said gently. Love like that is not wasted. Not one tear, not one prayer. Linda felt her chest tighten. Sometimes, he continued, the hardest hearts are the ones closest to waking up. She looked at him, uncertain. What do you mean? He met her eyes. I mean, he said quietly, today was not the end of your story. And for reasons she couldn't explain, Linda believed him. They finished their meal in a comfortable silence. Outside, the afternoon light had softened, the sharp glare of the Texas sun giving way to a warmer glow that slipped through the diner window and settled gently on the table between them. Linda felt fuller than she had in days, not just in her stomach, but somewhere deeper, quieter. The man stood first and paid the bill before she could protest. He left a tip large enough to make the waitress pause and look after him with curiosity. Thank you, she said, meaning more than just the food. He nodded as if gratitude were unnecessary. I'll walk you home, he said. They stepped back onto the sidewalk. The air felt lighter now, as though the day itself had exhaled. Linda noticed her steps were steadier, her breathing calmer. They didn't talk much as they walked. Only the sound of their footsteps and the distant murmur of traffic accompanied them. When they reached her apartment building in Oak Cliff, Linda stopped. This is it, she said, suddenly self-conscious. The building was old, its paint peeling, its hallway dim. It's not much. The man looked at the place carefully, not with discomfort, not with pity, only with attention. May I come in for a moment? He asked. She hesitated, then nodded. Inside, the apartment was small and sparsely furnished. A narrow bed, a single chair, a tiny table by the window. On the wall hung a modest cross, worn smooth by time and touch. The man stood before it for a long moment, saying nothing. Then he turned back to her. I want to ask you for something, he said. Linda's hands tightened together. What is it? Promise me you won't give up, he said gently. No matter how rejected you feel, no matter how alone. Don't let today steal your faith. She felt something rise in her chest, fear mixed with hope. I'm so tired, she admitted. I don't know how much strength I have left. That's why this matters, he replied, because what comes next won't look like justice at first. It will look like silence. He stepped closer. But silence does not mean absence, he said, and love like yours always reaches heaven. Linda swallowed. I promise, she said softly. The man lifted his hand and rested it lightly on her head, not pressing, not dramatic, just enough to feel real. You are loved more than you know, he said, and what was done to you today will not go unanswered. Before she could ask what he meant, he turned toward the door. Wait, Linda said, I never asked your name. He paused at the threshold and looked back, a faint smile touching his lips. Names are less important than truth, he said. You can call me a friend. Then he stepped into the hallway. Linda followed, but when she looked out, the corridor was empty. No footsteps, no closing door. Just a stillness that left her heart racing and a strange certainty settling deep within her. Something had been set in motion, and it could no longer be stopped. That night, Veronica Ortega lay awake in a bed that cost more than her mother's yearly rent. The sheets were Egyptian cotton. The room was cooled to the perfect temperature. Outside the tall windows of the Highland Park mansion, the city glowed softly, quiet, orderly, controlled. Yet sleep would not come. She turned onto her side, then onto her back, staring at the ceiling as if answers might be written there. Frank slept beside her, breathing evenly, untouched by the storm building inside her chest. Veronica closed her eyes and immediately she saw it again. The splash of water, her mother's startled face, the sound of glass shattering on marble. She opened her eyes quickly and sat up. "Get it together," she muttered to herself. "She embarrassed you. You did what you had to do." She swung her legs off the bed and walked barefoot to the bathroom. The floor was cool beneath her feet. She turned on the shower, letting hot water pour over her shoulders, steam filling the space. But instead of comfort, a chill crept in. The water was hot, she could feel it, but inside she felt cold, unsettled, as if something were wrong in a way she couldn't name. She leaned her forehead against the tile and tried to breathe. Then the voice came back, not out loud, inside her mind. "I'm hungry." Veronica straightened sharply, heart pounding. "It's nothing," she told herself. "Just guilt. It'll pass." She dressed in silk pajamas and went downstairs to the kitchen. The refrigerator hummed softly as she opened it. Inside were shelves of imported cheese, fresh fruit, prepared meals delivered that morning. She reached for something, anything, then stopped. The thought hit her without warning. "My mother hasn't eaten in days." Veronica slammed the refrigerator shut. "What is wrong with me?" she whispered. She poured herself a glass of water and drank it too quickly, the cold biting at her throat. As she set the glass down, her eyes drifted to the long dining table, and she froze. Something lay there, folded neatly at the center, as if placed with intention. A faded blue scarf. Her breath caught. She recognized it instantly. Her mother's. Veronica stepped closer, her movements slow, cautious. She reached out and touched the fabric. It was real, worn soft by years of use, still faintly smelled like laundry soap. "That's not possible," she said aloud. Beneath the scarf was a small piece of paper. Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. The handwriting was unfamiliar, simple, steady. The love of a mother does not disappear when it's rejected. It waits. "How long will you keep running from your own heart?" Veronica dropped the note as if it burned her. She looked around the empty room, pulse racing. "Who did this?" she whispered. The house was silent, but for the first time since she'd moved into it, that silence didn't feel peaceful. It felt like she was being watched, and somewhere deep inside, a truth she had spent years avoiding began to press against her chest. Not with anger, but with unbearable weight. Veronica didn't sleep that night. She lay in bed with the lights on, the blue scarf folded neatly on the nightstand like an accusation she couldn't escape. Every time she closed her eyes, the words from the note surfaced again. Calm, steady, relentless. It waits. She turned onto her side, then onto her back. Frank shifted once in his sleep and murmured something unintelligible, but didn't wake. The house remained still, wrapped in its usual illusion of safety. At exactly 3:33 a.m., Veronica gave up. She slipped out of bed and patted down the stairs, drawn back to the kitchen as if something unfinished were calling her there. The marble floor felt colder than before, the air heavier. She reached the dining table and picked up the note again, scanning the handwriting for any clue. A neighbor? A prank? Someone from security? Nothing made sense. She walked to the security panel by the door and checked the cameras. The footage from earlier showed nothing unusual. No intruder, no shadow, no movement around the table. The scarf shouldn't have been there. Her chest tightened. She poured another glass of water and took a sip, then froze mid-swallow. The taste was wrong, flat, empty. She set the glass down untouched. As she turned, the lights flickered. Once, twice. Veronica's breath caught. "Hello?" she called out, hating the tremor in her voice. No answer. She moved through the living room, every step careful, scanning corners, doorways, reflections in the dark glass of the windows. Her heart hammered so loudly she was sure it could be heard. Then she felt it. Not a sound, not a touch, a presence. She stopped near the sofa, pulse racing. The room smelled faintly different, clean, almost like fresh air after rain. The kind of smell you notice only when it interrupts something stale. "Frank," she whispered. Nothing. She turned toward the hallway, ready to run back upstairs, when she saw him. A man was sitting on the sofa, dressed in simple white. He sat calmly, hands resting on his knees as if he had always been there. The lamp beside him cast a soft light across his face, revealing eyes that held neither threat nor surprise, only recognition. Veronica stumbled back a step. "Who are you?" she demanded. "How did you get in here?" The man looked at her with quiet sadness. "We need to talk," he said. Her breath came in shallow bursts. "I'm calling the police." "You can," he replied gently, "but they can't help you with what's breaking inside you." Her hands shook as she reached for her phone. Then the light shifted just enough for her to see his face clearly, and something deep within her, something she had buried under years of ambition and control, recognized him before her mind could. "No," she whispered. The man leaned forward slightly. "Yes," he said. And in that moment, Veronica knew her life was about to change, whether she was ready or not. Veronica's phone slipped from her fingers and hit the marble floor with a dull sound. She didn't reach for it. She couldn't. Every instinct told her to run, to scream, to wake her husband, but her legs refused to move. The man in white stood slowly, not rushing, not advancing, giving her space as if he understood fear intimately. "I'm not here to harm you," he said. His voice was calm, not soothing, calm in a way that made resistance feel pointless. "You broke into my house," Veronica snapped, trying to find her anger, clinging to it like armor. "That is harm." The man tilted his head slightly, studying her, not as a stranger would, but as someone who knew her well. "I was invited," he said quietly. "By who?" she demanded. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he gestured toward the dining table, where the blue scarf still lay folded. "By the one whose tears reached heaven." Veronica's breath stuttered. "This is a trick," she said, backing away until she felt the wall behind her. "I don't believe in—" She stopped herself. The words felt hollow. The man took a step closer. "Sit down," he said gently. "No." "I wasn't asking," he replied, not harshly, but with a firmness that left no room for argument. To her own shock, Veronica obeyed. She lowered herself onto the edge of the armchair opposite him, hands clenched tightly in her lap. Her heart raced, but beneath the panic was something else, an ache she hadn't allowed herself to feel in years. "Who are you?" she whispered. The man looked at her for a long moment. "I am someone who saw what happened today," he said. Her jaw tightened. "You didn't see anything." "I saw the water," he continued. "I saw the glass shatter. I heard every word you said." Veronica shook her head. "That's impossible." "I saw your mother walk out of this house soaked and shaking," he went on, his voice steady but heavy. "I saw her walk for miles under the sun because she had no money for the bus. I saw her stop, leaning against a street sign, asking God to let her die because she was too tired to go on." Veronica's eyes burned. "Stop," she whispered. "And I saw," he added, "what you did not." She swallowed hard. "What?" "I saw her kneel on the floor of her apartment that night," he said, "weak, dizzy, hungry, and instead of asking for revenge, she prayed for you." The words landed like a blow. "No," Veronica said, shaking her head again. "She wouldn't." "She did," he replied. "She asked that you be protected, that you find peace, that your heart would soften." Veronica felt something crack inside her chest. "I didn't mean to." Her voice broke. "I didn't think—" "You thought about yourself," the man said, not accusing, simply stating the truth. "And that choice has a weight." Tears spilled down Veronica's face, ruining her makeup, streaking down cheeks that had been carefully perfected for a world that suddenly felt very far away. "Why are you telling me this?" she asked through sobs. "What do you want from me?" The man leaned forward, his eyes unwavering. "I want you to see," he said. Veronica looked up, confused. "See what?" He raised his hand slowly, palm open. "The truth you've been running from," he said. "And once you do, nothing will ever be the same." As his hand moved toward her forehead, the room seemed to blur, and Veronica realized, too late to stop it, that she was about to relive everything she had tried so hard to forget. The moment his hand touched her forehead, the room vanished. The marble floor, the designer furniture, the carefully curated silence of the mansion, all of it dissolved like mist. Veronica gasped, instinctively reaching out, but her hands passed through empty air. She was standing on a cracked sidewalk. Oak Cliff. She knew it instantly, though she hadn't been back in years. The street looked smaller than she remembered. The houses closer together. Paint peeled from doors and window frames. The smell of oil, dust, and early morning heat hung in the air. And then she saw her mother. Linda was younger here, maybe in her early 40s. Her hair was pulled back tightly, face already lined with exhaustion. She carried a plastic bucket in one hand and a bag of cleaning rags in the other. The sky was still dark. Veronica turned toward the man in white. "What is this?" "A day you forgot," he said gently. The scene moved. Linda walked into a large house in a wealthy neighborhood. Veronica watched as her mother scrubbed floors on her knees, hands red and cracked from chemicals. Hours passed in seconds. Linda's back stiffened. She winced but kept going. Then another house. Then another. Veronica's chest tightened. The image shifted again. Now it was evening. Linda sat at a small kitchen table in their old apartment. 3 children slept in the next room. Linda stared at a plate with only a few spoonfuls of food left. She pushed it away. Veronica felt her stomach twist. "She skipped meals," Veronica whispered. "I didn't know." "You didn't ask," the man replied softly. The scene changed. Veronica saw herself at 17, complaining about her clothes, her house, the smell of food cooking late at night. "Why can't we be normal?" the younger Veronica snapped. Linda only smiled and touched her daughter's hair. "Someday," she said, "someday you'll have more than this." The world shifted again. College. Veronica sat with friends at a cafe, laughing. Her phone buzzed on the table. "Mama calling." She ignored it. The call went to voicemail. The man's voice came quietly beside her. She was calling to say she felt dizzy, that she might faint. Veronica's breath caught. "She never told me." "She didn't want to worry you," he said. The next image came fast. A hospital room. Linda lay on a bed, IV in her arm, skin pale. A doctor spoke about diabetes, blood pressure, exhaustion, about rest. The younger Veronica stood there, checking her watch. "I have an interview," she said impatiently. "I'll come back later." She never did. Veronica dropped to her knees. "Stop!" she cried. "Please!" But the visions continued. The wedding, the hotel ballroom, crystal lights, expensive flowers. Linda sat alone at a table near the back, wearing her best dress, hands folded in her lap. Veronica passed her again and again without stopping. At the end of the night, Linda approached timidly. "You look beautiful," she said. "Thank you," Veronica replied flatly, already turning away. The world snapped back. Veronica found herself once again in the mansion, collapsed on the floor, sobbing uncontrollably. Her chest burned, breath coming in broken gasps. The man in white knelt in front of her, his voice firm now. "Do you understand?" he asked. Veronica looked up at him through tears. "I forgot," she whispered. "I forgot who I was. I forgot who she was." "You didn't forget," he corrected gently. "You chose to look away." Her shoulders shook. "I hurt her," Veronica said. "I broke her." The man met her gaze. "And now," he said quietly, "you must decide what to do with that truth." The weight of his words settled over her like a sentence, because for the first time in her life, Veronica understood something terrifying and clear. Some wounds cannot be undone. They can only be answered. Veronica pressed her palms against the floor, trying to steady herself. Her chest ached as if something heavy had been placed directly over her heart. The images she had just seen still flickered behind her eyes. Too sharp, too real to dismiss as imagination. I didn't know, she whispered again, weaker this time. I swear I didn't know. The man in white stood, his expression neither harsh nor forgiving, only honest. You knew enough, he said quietly, enough to choose comfort over compassion. Before she could respond, the air around them shifted again. The living room faded, not into darkness, but into memory. Veronica was standing in a small bedroom now, bare walls, a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. She recognized it instantly. Her childhood room. She looked down and saw herself, 12 years old, lying in bed with a fever. Her skin was flushed, her breathing shallow. Beside the bed sat Linda, younger again, eyes red from exhaustion, a damp cloth pressed gently to her daughter's forehead. Linda's lips moved in a whisper. Please, God, she prayed, take it from her. Give it to me if you have to. Veronica's breath caught. She watched her mother stay awake through the night, dozing only in short, painful intervals, waking at every change in her daughter's breathing. When morning came, Linda didn't rest. She went to work. The scene changed. Another memory. Veronica, 16, crying in the kitchen after being humiliated at school. Linda held her tightly, rocking her back and forth. You are worth more than you know, her mother whispered. Don't ever let anyone tell you otherwise. Veronica felt the words land like a knife. The vision shifted again. This time Linda stood alone at a bus stop, holding grocery bags. She leaned against the bench, dizzy, breathing hard. People passed her without stopping. The man's voice echoed softly. That day, she nearly collapsed. Veronica clenched her fists. Why didn't she tell me? Because she believed your life mattered more than her pain. The images came faster now. Linda working through the flu. Linda counting coins late at night. Linda skipping meals, smiling anyway. Then, the present. Linda soaked from head to toe, glasses shattered, walking away from the mansion. The scene slowed. Veronica saw what she had missed earlier, the way her mother's shoulders trembled, not from anger, but from grief. The way Linda paused once, just once, as if considering turning back, then didn't. The vision ended abruptly. Veronica was back on the mansion floor, gasping for air, tears soaking into the carpet. I didn't deserve her, she cried. I still don't. The man in white knelt beside her. Grace is not earned, he said. It is received. She looked up at him, eyes swollen, voice breaking. Is she going to die? Veronica asked. Silence followed, not long, but heavy. Your mother is very sick, he said finally. Diabetes, blood pressure, years of neglect, by her body and by those who should have protected her. Veronica's heart dropped. How much time does she have? She whispered. That depends, he replied. On what? She asked desperately. On whether love finally arrives, he said, or whether pride delays it again. Veronica shook her head violently. I'll fix this. I'll do anything. I'll give her money, a house, the best doctors. He interrupted her gently. She doesn't need your money. Veronica froze. She never did, he continued. She needs your presence, your humility, your repentance. The words struck deeper than any accusation. Go to her, he said. Not tomorrow, not when it's convenient. Now. Veronica pushed herself to her feet, heart pounding. Will you come with me? She asked, fear and hope tangled together. The man's gaze softened, but only slightly. This is your step to take, he said. I have already done mine. She hesitated, panic rising again. What if I'm too late? The man looked at her with a sorrow that carried centuries of understanding. That, he said quietly, is the question every heart eventually has to face. And as Veronica turned toward the door, keys already shaking in her hand, she knew one thing with terrifying clarity. This was not about fixing the past. It was about choosing the next moment, and she could not afford to choose wrong again. Veronica didn't bother changing clothes. She grabbed her keys from the counter, her hands shaking so badly she dropped them once before finally managing to hold on. The house felt different now, too large, too empty, like a place she no longer belonged to. As she pulled open the front door, she glanced back over her shoulder. The man in white was gone. No sound, no fading light, No trace he had ever been there. Only the blue scarf on the table remained. Veronica swallowed hard and stepped into the night. The engine of her car roared to life, breaking the silence of the gated street. As she drove, the manicured lawns and quiet streets of Highland Park blurred past her, replaced by darker roads and older neighborhoods as she headed south. Her mind raced faster than the car. What if she's already asleep? What if she doesn't open the door? What if I waited too long? At a red light, her hands tightened around the steering wheel. I'm sorry, she whispered aloud, not sure who she was speaking to anymore. I didn't know how to love her. The light turned green. She pressed the gas harder than she should have. By the time she reached Oak Cliff, it was nearly 3 in the morning. The streets were quiet, dotted with the occasional flicker of a porch light or the distant sound of a passing train. She parked crookedly near the curb and stepped out of the car, her breath visible in the cooler night air. The apartment building stood before her, older than she remembered, paint chipped, stair railings rusted. This was where her mother lived, had lived. Veronica climbed the steps 2 at a time, heart pounding so loudly she was sure it could be heard through the walls. She stopped in front of a familiar door, green paint, faded, peeling near the handle. Her hand hovered in the air. For a brief, cowardly moment, she considered turning back. Then she knocked. No answer. She knocked again, harder this time. "Mom!" she called, her voice cracking. "It's me! Please!" Nothing. Panic rose sharply in her chest. She pressed her forehead against the door, fighting the urge to break down right there in the hallway. "Please," she whispered, "please don't let me be too late." Then she heard it. Slow footsteps. A light switched on inside. The door creaked open just a few inches. Linda stood there, thinner than Veronica remembered. Her shoulders were slightly hunched, her face pale, but her eyes, those eyes, softened instantly when they landed on her daughter. "Veronica?" Linda asked quietly, as if afraid she was imagining her. Veronica didn't answer. She dropped to her knees. "I'm sorry," she sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I was cruel. I was blind. I hurt you in ways I don't even know how to name." Linda gasped softly and reached out, steadying herself against the doorframe. Veronica looked up at her, tears streaming down her face. "Please," she said again, "let me be your daughter." For a long moment, Linda said nothing. Then she did something Veronica hadn't expected. She stepped forward, slowly, carefully, and wrapped her arms around her daughter. "Oh, my child," Linda whispered, her voice trembling. "I never stopped waiting for you." And as Veronica buried her face in her mother's shoulder, she felt something inside her finally break, not into pieces, but open. They stayed there for a long time, kneeling in the narrow doorway, the hallway light flickering softly above them. 2 bodies pressed together, shaking, breathing, clinging as if letting go might undo the miracle of this moment. Veronica felt how light her mother was. Too light. When Linda finally pulled back, she swayed slightly, and Veronica caught her just in time. "Mom," she said, panic flashing across her face, "you shouldn't be standing." Linda gave a small smile, the kind she used when she didn't want to worry anyone. "I'm all right," she whispered. "Just tired." Veronica helped her back inside. The apartment felt smaller than she remembered, smaller than it had any right to be. A single bed pushed against the wall, a wooden chair with a folded blanket on it, a tiny table near the window, and on the wall above everything else, a simple cross, worn smooth from years of touch. This was where her mother had lived, alone. Veronica's throat tightened. "I didn't know it was like this," she said softly. Linda lowered herself onto the bed, breathing carefully. "It's enough," she replied. "I had what I needed." Veronica shook her head. "No," she said, kneeling in front of her mother. "You had what you endured." She took her mother's hands in hers. They were rough, calloused, hands that had carried a lifetime of work and sacrifice. "I treated you like you were nothing," Veronica said, her voice breaking again. "I made you feel ashamed for loving me." Linda reached up and cupped her daughter's face. "Listen to me," she said gently. "You could never make me ashamed of loving you." Tears slipped down Veronica's cheeks. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." Linda smiled faintly. "Forgiveness isn't about what you deserve," she said. "It's about what love refuses to give up." Veronica bowed her head, overcome. I want to take you home, she said after a moment. With me. Tonight. We'll go to the doctor first thing in the morning. The best one. I'll stay with you. I'll make it right. Linda hesitated. I don't want to be a burden, she said quietly. Veronica looked up, eyes fierce now. Not defensive, but resolved. You were never a burden, she said. I was. Linda studied her daughter's face, searching for something. Perhaps the ambition she had once seen there. The distance, the hardness. What she found instead was fear. Fear of losing her. Fear of not being enough. Fear of being too late. Linda nodded slowly. All right, she said, if that's what you want. Veronica let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. She helped her mother gather her few belongings. The blue scarf, a worn Bible, an old photograph tucked inside its pages. That was all. At the door, Linda paused and looked back at the small room. I prayed a lot here, she said softly. Sometimes I didn't think anyone was listening. Veronica swallowed. Someone was, she said. They stepped out into the night together. As Veronica guided her mother down the steps and toward the car, she felt a strange awareness, like a quiet presence just beyond her vision. She turned once, glancing back at the building. For just a moment, she thought she saw a figure standing at the far end of the hallway. White, still, watching. Then the light flickered, and the hallway was empty. Veronica helped her mother into the passenger seat, closed the door gently, and walked around to the driver's side. As she started the engine, only one thought filled her mind. This time she would not let go. Not again. Morning came quietly, not with urgency, not with drama, just light slipping through the curtains of a guest bedroom that had never been used before. Linda lay awake, listening to unfamiliar sounds, the distant hum of traffic, the low murmur of voices downstairs. The bed beneath her was soft in a way she wasn't used to. For a moment, she wondered if she was still dreaming. Then the door opened slowly. Good morning, Mom, Veronica said. She stood there holding a tray. Nothing extravagant, just oatmeal, toast, and a cup of warm tea. Linda pushed herself up, slightly surprised. You didn't have to. I wanted to, Veronica said, cutting her off gently. She set the tray down and sat on the edge of the bed, suddenly unsure of herself. I used to think love was about giving people things, she added quietly. I'm starting to understand it's really about staying. Linda studied her daughter's face. Not the makeup, not the clothes, but the tiredness in her eyes, the softness, the absence of armor. They went to the doctor later that morning. The hospital was private, efficient, clean. Test after test confirmed what the man in white had already said. Advanced diabetes, uncontrolled blood pressure, early kidney damage. Serious, but not hopeless. With proper care, the doctor said carefully, and consistent treatment, there's time. Veronica exhaled shakily and reached for her mother's hand. Time. It felt like a gift she hadn't earned. The days that followed were different from anything Veronica had known. She canceled meetings, ignored messages, stayed home. She learned how to check blood sugar, how to cook simple meals her mother actually enjoyed, how to sit quietly without filling the space with noise. At night, she would sit beside Linda's bed and listen to stories she had never asked for before, about childhood dreams, about fear, about the quiet strength it took to keep going when no one noticed. And slowly, something changed, not just in Linda's health, though color returned to her face and strength to her voice, but in the house itself. The silence no longer felt empty. The rooms no longer echoed. One afternoon, Frank came home early and stopped short when he saw Linda in the living room, sunlight warming her face as Veronica brushed her hair. He didn't say anything at first, then quietly, "Welcome home," he said. Linda smiled. "Thank you." Weeks passed. Linda grew stronger. Veronica grew gentler. But the real miracle, the one neither doctor nor chart could measure, was this. Veronica no longer rushed. She listened. She noticed. She stayed. One evening, as they sat together in the garden, Linda spoke softly. "Do you know what saved us?" she asked. Veronica shook her head. "Not the house," Linda said. Not the doctors. Not even the second chance. She looked at her daughter with a knowing smile. It was humility, she said. The moment you chose love over pride. Veronica lowered her eyes, tears forming again. I don't want to forget, she whispered. Linda reached over and squeezed her hand. You won't, she said, because once love teaches you how to see, it never lets you go blind again. And somewhere beyond the garden walls, unseen but unmistakably present, grace continued its quiet work. Not in thunder, not in spectacle, but in hearts that had finally learned how to remain open. 2 months later, the house no longer felt like a showroom. It felt lived in. The guest bedroom had become Linda's room. Soft light, fresh flowers by the window, a small cross above the nightstand. Every morning, Veronica brought breakfast upstairs. Nothing fancy. Just what her mother loved. Simple food, warm coffee, time. On a quiet Saturday afternoon, Linda sat at the kitchen table, reading from her worn Bible while Veronica chopped vegetables nearby. The sound of the knife against the cutting board was steady, almost meditative. Mom, Veronica said suddenly without turning around, can I ask you something? Linda looked up. Of course. That day, Veronica hesitated. After I sent you away, what did you pray for? Linda closed the book gently. I prayed that God wouldn't harden your heart, she said. I prayed that he would protect you from becoming someone you'd have to live with for the rest of your life. Veronica swallowed. He answered, she whispered. Linda smiled. He always does. That evening, Veronica suggested they go out for dinner, just the two of them. Not to an expensive restaurant, just somewhere familiar, somewhere real. They drove to a small diner in Oak Cliff, the Good Samaritan Diner, the same place where Linda had been fed when she had nothing left. The woman behind the counter looked up and froze for a moment, then her face broke into a wide smile. Linda, she said warmly, you look wonderful. Linda nodded. I'm doing much better. They took a table by the window. As they waited, Veronica glanced around, taking in the chipped paint, the simple tables, the ordinary beauty of it all. She leaned forward. This place saved my mom, she said quietly. The woman behind the counter overheard and chuckled softly. No, she said. Someone else did. Veronica's heart skipped. You knew him? The woman wiped her hands on her apron and nodded. Man in white, she said. Quiet, kind eyes. Told me something I never forgot. She paused, then repeated the words slowly. Whenever you feed someone who's hungry, you feed me. Veronica felt a chill move through her. Later that night, as they stepped outside, a cold wind brushed past them. On the corner near the bus stop, an elderly man sat hunched over, shivering, hands wrapped tightly around himself. Veronica stopped. For a moment, the old Veronica, the one who hurried past discomfort, rose instinctively. Then she remembered the glass, the water, the walk under the sun. She turned to her mother. Do you mind? She asked. Linda smiled knowingly. I'll wait. Veronica approached the man slowly. Sir, she said gently, are you hungry? He looked up, eyes tired but alert. I haven't eaten in a couple of days. The words struck her like a memory echoing back. Come with us, Veronica said. Please. Inside the diner, the man ate quietly, gratefully. When the food was gone, Veronica slipped some money into his hand and gave him the address of a local shelter she'd recently started supporting. Don't give up, she said softly. You matter. The man looked at her for a long moment, longer than necessary. Then he smiled. It wasn't a big smile, just a familiar one. When Veronica turned back to tell her mother, the man was gone. The plate sat empty, the chair untouched. Linda met her daughter's eyes. You saw him, didn't you? She asked gently. Veronica nodded, tears forming again. I think I did. Linda reached for her hand. He never left, she said. He just waits to be recognized. They walked out together into the night, side by side, and somewhere in the quiet spaces between strangers, in shared meals and softened hearts, love continued its work, unseen, unannounced, unmistakably alive. If this story touched your heart, ask yourself one question tonight. Who is waiting outside your door? Someone hungry? Someone forgotten? Someone you once loved, it's not too late. Subscribe to Heaven Walks with Us and share this story with someone who needs a second chance or the courage to give one.